Some families do not lose children by accident. Sometimes they lose them because someone wanted them forgotten. I did not understand those words when I first heard them. Looking back now, they explained everything. The Walker estate had always felt larger than life. The massive dining room, the endless hallways, the old portraits staring down from the walls, all of it carried the weight of generations. Yet on that particular evening, something felt different. The family had gathered for another formal dinner beneath the crystal chandelier. Harrison sat silently at the far end of the long oak table, exactly where he always sat. Isabel poured wine beside David while carefully guiding the conversation. Eleanor remained beneath the chandelier, unusually quiet. Victoria watched everyone with her familiar cold expression. Thomas discussed estate matters. James moved through the room with practiced efficiency. I remember feeling restless, not because anyone was arguing, but because everyone seemed determined to avoid certain subjects. After dinner, I wandered into the library. It was my favorite room in the mansion. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls. The scent of old paper lingered in the air. A fire burned softly inside the stone fireplace. I often escaped there when family gatherings became difficult to endure. That night, while looking through a collection of old family albums stacked on a side table, I noticed something unusual. One photograph had slipped partially from between two pages. At first, it looked like any ordinary family picture. Several adults stood together outside the estate decades earlier. The image was faded. The edges were worn. But something immediately caught my attention. A child stood near the center of the photograph. The child appeared to be around 7 or 8 years old. Blonde hair, serious expression, well-dressed like the rest of the family. Yet I had never seen that child before. Not in any photograph, not in any portrait, not in any family story. I leaned closer. The more I studied the image, the stranger it became. Everyone else in the photograph was recognizable. Eleanor looked younger. Thomas stood nearby. Even Harrison appeared in the background. But the child remained a complete mystery. As I turned the photograph over, I discovered a handwritten date and a single first name. Daniel. Nothing more. No last name. No explanation. Just Daniel. Suddenly a floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. Harrison stood near the doorway. His weathered face revealed nothing. His eyes moved from me to the photograph. For the first time that evening, he looked genuinely unsettled. Then he quietly said something that sent a chill through the room. You should not have found that picture. For several seconds, neither of us moved. The crackling fireplace was the only sound in the library. Harrison remained standing near the doorway, his weathered face partially hidden by the shadows. I looked down at the photograph again and then back at him. There was something in his expression I had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not fear. It looked more like regret. I asked him who the child was. Harrison's eyes remained fixed on the photograph. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he slowly crossed the room and stopped beside the table. His gaze lingered on the faded image for a long moment. Then he quietly said that some questions have a way of changing families forever. Before I could press him further, he turned and left the library without another word. The encounter stayed with me all night. The next morning, I returned to the library before anyone else was awake. I wanted another look at the photograph. I wanted to study every detail. But when I opened the album, my stomach tightened. The photograph was gone. I searched every page twice. Then a third time. Nothing. The space where it had been was empty. Someone had removed it. The discovery immediately raised more questions. Very few people even knew the photograph existed. Fewer still knew I had found it. I spent the rest of the morning paying closer attention to everyone inside the estate. Isabel appeared unusually calm, reviewing paperwork with David in a sitting room overlooking the gardens. Victoria moved through the mansion with her usual confidence. Thomas was occupied with legal files. Eleanor avoided conversation altogether, yet none of them seemed surprised by anything. It was as if the disappearance of the photograph had happened exactly as expected. Later that afternoon, I found James organizing records in a storage room near the back hallway. If anyone knew the history of the estate, it was him. I casually mentioned that I had been looking through old family albums. His hands stopped moving for the briefest moment. Then he continued sorting papers. I asked whether he had ever heard of a child named Daniel. The reaction was impossible to miss. James slowly lowered the folder in his hands and stared at the floor. The room suddenly felt smaller. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. He told me there were some names that had not been spoken inside the Walker estate for more than 30 years. Then he looked directly at me and said something that made my heart race. "If you found that name, Ethan, then someone made a mistake." James refused to say anything more. The moment those words left his mouth, he gathered the folders from the table and walked out of the storage room. I stood there alone, staring at the closed door. Someone made a mistake. The sentence echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. By evening, I knew I could not let the matter go. If a child named Daniel had once been part of the Walker family, there had to be evidence somewhere. Families like ours documented everything. Births, weddings, property transfers. Every major event ended up preserved in records. The problem was finding records nobody wanted found. The next morning I returned to the library. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating rows of books that stretched toward the ceiling. I began searching the oldest shelves, focusing on family albums and historical journals. Hours passed. Most of what I found was ordinary. Anniversary celebrations, business milestones, holiday gatherings. Yet something else slowly became apparent. There were gaps. Entire periods of family history seemed unusually thin. Certain years contained only a handful of photographs. Several albums appeared incomplete. Pages had been removed with deliberate care. The more I looked, the more obvious it became. Someone had edited the family's past. Near the back of a cabinet, I discovered a leather-bound inventory book used to catalog photographs decades earlier. The entries listed hundreds of images, dates, locations, names of people appearing in each photograph. My pulse quickened when I found a section from the same year as the missing picture. Several entries referenced family gatherings. Next to some descriptions, names had been neatly recorded. Eleanor, Thomas, Victoria, Harrison. Then I found it. Daniel. Not once, but multiple times. I stared at the page in disbelief. According to the inventory book, Daniel had appeared in family photographs over a period of nearly 2 years. Yet every image connected to those entries was missing from the archives. Someone had not removed a single photograph. Someone had erased an entire person. I quickly copied the page before returning the book exactly where I found it. Later that afternoon, I drove into the city to meet Sophia Bennett. If anyone could help me uncover official records, it was her. We sat inside her office overlooking the skyline while I showed her the copied entries. Sophia studied the page carefully. Her expression changed the moment she read the name. She looked up and asked a question I did not expect. "Did anyone ever tell you that there was once another heir connected to the Walker estate?" My heart nearly stopped. Before I could answer, Sophia opened a file drawer and removed a sealed folder. Across the front, stamped in faded letters, were 3 words: Restricted Family Records. For a moment, I simply stared at the folder resting on Sophia's desk. Restricted Family Records. The words alone suggested decades of secrecy. Sophia carefully opened the file and began sorting through its contents. Most of the documents were heavily redacted. Entire paragraphs had been blacked out. Names were missing. Dates had been removed. Yet one thing immediately stood out. The same first name appeared repeatedly throughout the surviving text. Daniel. My pulse quickened as Sophia continued reading. According to the surviving records, a legal review had taken place more than 30 years earlier, concerning succession rights connected to the Walker estate. The file never directly explained why. It simply referred to a minor whose status required special protection, a minor whose identity had later been sealed. I asked who ordered the records restricted. Sophia turned another page. Her expression tightened. Then she slowly pushed the document toward me. At the bottom was a familiar signature. Thomas Whitmore. I could hardly believe it. Thomas had spent his entire career protecting the family's interests. Yet now his name appeared at the center of something that looked increasingly deliberate. Before either of us could speak further, another detail caught my attention. Attached to one report was a handwritten note. Most of the ink had faded, but a single sentence remained legible. The child must never become part of the inheritance discussion. I felt a chill run through me. Someone had not merely hidden information. Someone had intentionally removed a person from the future of the family. Sophia admitted she had never seen language like that in an estate review. It made no legal sense unless powerful individuals had been working behind the scenes. As we continued examining the documents, another name surfaced unexpectedly: Eleanor Walker. Her name appeared beside several meetings held during the same period. The discovery only deepened the mystery. Eleanor had always seemed burdened by something she refused to discuss. Now it appeared she had been directly involved. Late that evening, I returned to the estate. The mansion felt unusually quiet. Most of the lights had been turned off. As I crossed the main hallway, I noticed a faint glow coming from the library. Through the partially opened door, I saw Harrison sitting alone beside the fireplace. An old leather journal rested in his hands. He seemed completely unaware of my presence. Then he turned a page, and a photograph slipped onto the floor. Even from the doorway, I recognized the image immediately. It was the same missing photograph, the one that had disappeared from the family album. And this time, Harrison was not trying to hide it. For several moments, I remained hidden in the hallway, watching Harrison from the partially open doorway. The firelight flickered across the library walls, casting long shadows over the shelves and antique furniture. Harrison slowly bent down and picked up the photograph. Instead of putting it away, he studied it carefully. His expression carried a sadness that seemed far older than the picture itself. Finally, I stepped into the room. Harrison looked up immediately. He did not appear surprised to see me. In fact, he almost seemed relieved. My eyes moved directly to the photograph in his hand. I asked him why he had taken it. I asked him who Daniel really was. Harrison stared into the fireplace before answering. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. He said there are moments when a family chooses a lie because the truth feels too dangerous. Then he handed me the photograph. This time I examined it more closely. Behind the group of adults stood the same child. But there was something I had missed before. The child was holding another photograph. It was small and partially folded, yet a handwritten date was visible. The date matched the year mentioned in Sophia's restricted records. My pulse quickened. Harrison noticed immediately. He told me to turn the photograph over. Written on the back, beneath the faded name Daniel, was a second note I had never seen before. It read, "Taken before the transfer." The transfer. The phrase meant nothing to me, yet Harrison's reaction suggested otherwise. Before I could ask another question, he opened the old journal resting beside him. Inside were dozens of carefully preserved documents. Newspaper clippings, letters, family notes, some dated back more than 40 years. Harrison turned several pages before stopping at a folded letter. The envelope had never been opened. Across the front was a name written in elegant handwriting. Eleanor Walker. I looked at Harrison in confusion. He quietly explained that Eleanor had written the letter on the same night Daniel disappeared from the family's official history. Somehow, the letter had never reached its intended recipient. I reached for the envelope, but Harrison stopped me, his eyes fixed on the seal. Then he said something that immediately changed everything. "Before you read that letter, Ethan, there is something you need to understand. Daniel was never removed because he was unwanted. He was removed because someone else stood to inherit everything if he vanished." The room fell silent. And for the first time since this mystery began, I realized the secret was not about a missing child. It was about a stolen future. The fire crackled softly between us as Harrison's words settled over the room. A stolen future. The phrase carried more weight than anything I had uncovered so far. For several moments I said nothing. Then I looked down at the unopened letter resting on the table. If Eleanor had written it on the night everything changed, perhaps it contained the answers everyone had spent decades avoiding. Harrison finally nodded. Very carefully, I broke the seal. The paper inside had yellowed with age, but the handwriting remained clear. The letter was not addressed to a lawyer or a business partner. It was addressed to a child. As I began reading, my heart raced. Eleanor wrote about fear. She wrote about pressure from powerful people within the family. Most importantly, she wrote about a decision she believed would haunt the family forever. Several names appeared throughout the letter, but one sentence stood out immediately. The child has done nothing wrong, yet others have decided his existence creates a problem. I read the line twice, then a third time. Eleanor never directly explained what happened afterward. Large portions of the story were missing, yet the meaning was impossible to ignore. Daniel had not disappeared because of an accident. His removal had been planned. I looked toward Harrison. He stared into the fire as though he had lived with that knowledge for years. Then he quietly revealed something else. Daniel had once stood first in line to inherit a significant portion of the family's founding assets. According to Harrison, old agreements connected to the estate had placed Daniel in a position of enormous importance. If Daniel remained part of the family record, future inheritance arrangements would have looked very different. Suddenly, many pieces began fitting together. The restricted records, the missing photographs, the altered family archives. Someone had benefited from Daniel's disappearance. Before I could ask another question, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The library door slowly opened. Eleanor stood there. She looked tired, more tired than I had ever seen her. Her eyes moved immediately to the letter in my hands. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she crossed the room and lowered herself into a chair opposite Harrison. The silence felt almost unbearable. Finally, Eleanor took a deep breath and spoke. She said she had spent more than 30 years hoping the truth would remain buried. Not because she was protecting herself, because she was protecting someone else. I asked who. Eleanor looked directly at me. Tears filled her eyes. Then she whispered a name I never expected to hear. Isabel. And in that instant, the mystery stopped being a story about the past. It became a story about someone still sitting at the Walker family table. The name hung in the air like a storm cloud. Isabel. For a moment I thought I had misunderstood. Eleanor sat motionless across from us, her eyes fixed on the letter resting on the table. Harrison remained silent beside the fireplace. Neither of them looked surprised by what had just been said. That alone told me everything. Isabel was somehow connected to the secret. I asked Eleanor to explain. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded them together. Then, after years of silence, she finally began telling the story she had carried for decades. She explained that when Daniel was still part of the family, the future of the estate seemed certain. Old inheritance agreements placed him in a unique position within the Walker bloodline. But powerful people inside the family feared what that future would mean for their own children. Fear slowly became influence. Influence became decisions. Decisions became secrets. Eleanor admitted she had witnessed conversations she wished she could forget. Meetings where adults discussed the future of a child as though he were a problem to be solved rather than a member of the family. The more she spoke, the more disturbed I became. Yet one detail stood out above everything else. Isabel herself had been only a child when these events occurred. She had not created the situation. She had inherited its consequences. That revelation changed my perspective immediately. Perhaps Isabel was not the architect of the deception. Perhaps she was simply its beneficiary. The next morning I met Sophia at her office. After reviewing everything Eleanor had revealed, Sophia searched deeper into old trust documents connected to the estate. Several hours later, she found something remarkable. Decades earlier, a contingency clause had been added to a family trust. The language was complex, but the meaning was clear. If one specific heir became permanently absent from family records, inheritance rights would automatically transfer elsewhere. I stared at the document in disbelief. The clause had effectively rewarded Daniel's disappearance. More importantly, Sophia identified who ultimately benefited from that transfer. A branch of the family connected directly to Isabel's side of the estate. The discovery answered one question while creating another. Had Isabel known any of this? That evening I returned to the mansion. Another formal dinner was underway beneath the chandelier. The familiar faces sat around the long oak table. David looked exhausted. Victoria appeared calm as ever. Thomas reviewed documents near his place setting. Harrison remained silent at the far end. Isabel sat beside David, gracefully carrying on conversation as though nothing had changed. Yet for the first time, I found myself watching her differently. Not as a villain, not as a victim, but as someone standing at the center of a secret she might not fully understand herself. Then, as dinner continued, Thomas quietly announced that a sealed inheritance review would be presented to the family the following evening. The reaction around the table was immediate, and Isabel's expression changed before she could hide it. The following evening arrived with a sense of inevitability. From the moment I entered the dining room, I could feel the tension. The massive oak table stretched beneath the chandelier exactly as it always had, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every person seated there seemed aware that something significant was about to happen. Harrison sat silently at the far end of the table. Isabel remained beside David, composed but unusually quiet. Victoria watched the room with careful attention. Eleanor avoided eye contact. Thomas sat with a thick folder resting beside his plate. Even James appeared uneasy as he moved through the room. The dinner itself passed with almost no conversation. Small talk rose and disappeared quickly. Nobody seemed interested in discussing business, family events, or future plans. Everyone was waiting. Finally, after the last plates were cleared away, Thomas stood. The room immediately fell silent. He opened the folder and removed several documents. His expression was serious. He explained that during a recent review of historical estate records, previously restricted materials had resurfaced. Because those records directly affected succession history, the family deserved to hear the findings together. Nobody interrupted. Nobody objected. Thomas began reading. The documents confirmed what Sophia and I had already discovered. Decades earlier, inheritance structures connected to the founding assets of the estate had been altered after the removal of a minor from official family records. The language remained formal and careful, yet the implications were impossible to ignore. Someone had disappeared from the family story, and that disappearance changed the future of the estate. I watched Isabel closely as Thomas continued. To my surprise, she looked genuinely confused. Her expression reflected concern rather than guilt. It was becoming increasingly clear that she had inherited the benefits of an old decision without fully understanding its origins. Then Thomas reached the final section of the report. The room grew even quieter. According to newly recovered correspondence and supporting records, evidence existed proving that the missing child had occupied a legally recognized position within the bloodline before being erased from family documentation. A stunned silence followed. David lowered his eyes. Eleanor closed them briefly. Victoria remained perfectly still. Then something unexpected happened. Harrison slowly stood from his chair. For years, he had remained on the edge of every important conversation. Now every eye in the room turned toward him. He looked around the table before speaking. His voice was calm but firm. He said the family had spent decades searching for the wrong answers. The real question was not who benefited from the missing child's disappearance. The real question was whether the child had ever truly disappeared at all. The moment those words left his mouth, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. The silence that followed felt endless. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Harrison remained standing at the far end of the table while every member of the family stared at him. The chandelier cast a warm glow across the room, but the atmosphere felt colder than ever. Finally, Thomas broke the silence. He looked toward Harrison and quietly asked whether he wished to continue. Harrison nodded. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a worn envelope. The paper looked old enough to have survived decades untouched. He placed it on the table beside Thomas. With careful hands, Thomas opened it and removed several documents. The first was a certified copy of an original succession record. The second was a sealed affidavit signed many years earlier. As Thomas read, the truth slowly emerged. Daniel had never vanished from existence. He had vanished from the family's history. After a series of private decisions made by influential relatives, the child had been removed from official inheritance discussions and raised under a different identity outside the public record connected to the estate. Gasps echoed softly around the table. David looked stunned. Eleanor lowered her head. Isabel stared at the documents as though seeing them for the first time. Then Thomas reached the final page. His voice grew quieter. According to the affidavit, only one person had remained in contact with the child throughout the years. Only one person had preserved every document, every photograph, and every piece of evidence necessary to restore the truth when the time was right. Harrison Walker. My heart pounded. For decades, Harrison had allowed the family to believe he was merely an outsider sitting at the edge of their world. Yet the documents revealed something entirely different. He had been the guardian of the family's most important secret. More importantly, the affidavit confirmed that Daniel's bloodline held the original succession rights connected to the founding estate. The inheritance story everyone accepted had been incomplete for more than 30 years. No one spoke for several moments. Then Isabel slowly stood from her chair. Tears filled her eyes. She admitted she had known fragments of the story, but never the full truth. She had inherited advantages created by decisions made long before she understood their consequences. Across the room, Eleanor finally looked relieved. Years of guilt seemed to lift from her shoulders. Harrison remained calm. He showed no triumph, no bitterness, only quiet acceptance. As the evening drew to a close, Thomas announced that the family's official records would be corrected and preserved for future generations. The truth would no longer remain hidden. Later, As everyone slowly left the dining room, I looked around the estate that had shaped so many lives. The mystery had begun with a forgotten child and a faded photograph. It ended with a family finally facing its own history. And as Harrison stood alone beside the fireplace, I realized something important. The true heir had never been the person who inherited the most. It was the person who carried the truth when everyone else chose to forget it.